Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yes.
can hear you. Everybody's on. Okay. Well, welcome and good evening. My name is Margo Claybrooks. I'm a licensed clinical mental health provider here in Maryland, in the state of Maryland. I have my colleagues right with me here, and I'll have them introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Shanice Martin. I'm a licensed graduate professional counselor in Maryland. I would say my niche is anxiety and mood disorders.
Hi, my name is Edna Grayson. I'm also a licensed graduate professional counselor here in Maryland as well. And my niche also is mood disorders and couples therapy.
Hi, my name is Pierre Bachelor Doval. I'm a school counselor for I work for PG County Public School System. As I stated previously, that I am finally finished up my class to be licensed, so I can apply for my licensure. So hopefully by beginning of January, I'll apply for that, and hopefully all goes well with that. But I look forward to definitely to dialogue with my colleagues this evening.
Yes. Well, I kind of forgot my niche, and so I guess I'll add that in now. But that is depression and anxiety. I work with a number of clients in helping them work through their depression and anxiety. And so tonight's discussion, we're going to talk about cognitive distortions and depression, looking at the emotional versus logical reasoning. And so we have some questions that we'll go over. But before we kind of do that, I wanted to just kind of give a little breakdown of depression, because we have more than 10% of the U.S. population, individuals have are diagnosed with depression or will be diagnosed with depression in their, 1 in 10 will be diagnosed with depression during their lifetime. But we definitely, at this particular point, we see more than 10% of the population suffering from depression, right? However, it is I want to say most people don't have a good description of depression, and it continuously sometimes is misunderstood in terms of what we look for in depression, right? Because we can hear some people say, well, I think I'm depressed, or I'm going through depression. So what exactly does that look like, right? And what do we look for as clinicians to diagnose someone and treat them who's diagnosed with depression or have symptoms of depression, right? With depression, you'll see that it's women who are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression than we do see our male counterparts. And like I said, there's also that we kind of look at the 1 in 10 of people who will experience it during a lifetime. And so that's a large group of people when we look at, the U.S., right, the United States. Symptoms that we find in depression, and you all can, chime in if I miss anything. But some of the symptoms that um, we see, sadness, isolation, and then within that sadness is more so like a depressive mood, right? We have some change in appetite, right? And so we may see change in weight, whether that's from a decrease or an increase, in appetite. And so we may see some changes in the weight there. You see isolation, as far as depression goes, right? But when we're looking at some of these things, we're looking at the duration, frequency, right? And so it's important that individuals know that when we're looking at an episode of someone who may be episodic, we're looking at a 2-week span. at that particular time. And if it's something that has occurred over some time, whether that would be, you've had it and had an onset in your early 20s, right? And you do see a lot of onset of depression around those ages. Around the age of 20 and 30 is you'll see a lot of onset. And in that onset or in that age bracket, you see it's a lot of transition in life because you have individuals who are either coming out of college or going into the workforce. And so it brings on a lot of the stresses, right? And people start to question themselves. And so when we're looking at some of the mood, you can see some of loss of interest in the things that people would normally be interested in doing, right? Any recurring thoughts that are more so negative thoughts, and those thoughts that some people even have thoughts going as far as consistently thinking about death, right? Consistently thinking about, the life points and milestones of, I have to, meet the expectations of being married at a certain age, right? Having a certain career at a certain age. And so that's when a lot of the onset of depression starts to happen. If there's anything else that you all want to, maybe chime in and include that I may have left out, as far as it relates to looking at depression and how do we work to diagnose someone with depression?
The only thing, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say definitely another one would be just low energy and fatigue. So just not having the desire to get out of bed, no matter how many hours, if you got the full 8 hours of sleep, you don't want to get out of bed. You just feel drained and exhausted all the time. Also, another one is concentration. You just can't focus on anything. You're reading a book and you're just reading the same sentence over and over and over because you just can't process the information.
Yes. Definitely, you hit some great points there, Shanice, because that is number one. You'll have a lot of clients come in or an individual come in and say it's hard for them to get out of bed, right? I've been in bed all day, or I've been in bed for weeks, right? And when we're looking at that frequency, duration, and that time that someone has been consistently, feeling, that fatigue and having difficulty concentrating, and definitely another one is sleep. Looking at the sleep pattern and the sleep hygiene, if it's interrupted sleep, difficulty falling asleep. And so these are the signs that we kind of look at when we're working with individuals to try to assess where they are, to know that this is depression versus it being another disorder, and sort of working to, kind of rule out. And so we wanted to make sure that everyone understand and kind of have clear understanding of depression, right? And what that definition is, and some of the risk factors that happen within that can cause or influence depression. And I think we talked about some of this in our last discussion, where we're looking at whether that's family history, right? That's a risk factor. We're looking at poverty, we're looking at unemployment, we're looking at regular use of drugs and alcohol. And so these are the things that can kind of influence depression. And so we have some questions that we're going to start with, right? Right. And so I guess we'll go through the questions and we'll see what we have. If our viewers are interested in asking a question, they can definitely leave a comment. If you're having difficulty with leaving a comment, we will take your questions via text. And I can provide that phone number to you so that you can text it, and we will respond at the end of our questions. And I guess the first question is that we came up with in talking about depression, how to stop the depressed mind, and what does that look like? Or not stop, because I actually want to rephrase that, really more so how to manage the depressed mind, because that's what individuals with depression do. They learn to manage it.
So I would definitely say the first step is just being self-aware and knowing that you're going through these depressive symptoms. So a lot of people, they may think, it's health reasons why they're experiencing some symptoms, but it's like they're eating, they like lose their appetite, their sleep. We might think it's health related, not so more mental health related. And so just being able to recognize, knowing yourself beforehand. So knowing, usually I like to go out on Fridays with my friends, and now I find myself not wanting to go and getting irritated when they invite me places. So, why is that going on? What's some factors that's causing you to feel this way? So kind of being to recognize when you're feeling down versus when you're feeling your normal, regular self.
To also add to what Shanice was saying, is also, like she says, self-awareness and being aware of your situation or circumstances that you may be going through and what causes this. And those things come with self-reflection. And because when you have self-reflection, you're able to say, what's happening here? Something just not connect. And that's when it's very important for you to either see a counselor or if a good friend or a parent, you can talk to them about, hey, I'm feeling this way about this, and this is what's causing me, and this is the issue. And I think that once we're like, self-awareness is vital. Like Shanice saying, it's vital for you to be aware of who you are. Because the more you lose your identity, that's when depression can really kick in. And because all kind of things going through your mind, a lot of stuff your mind is going like 100 miles per hour. Case in point, when you're in a relationship, let's say, for instance, a toxic relationship, right? And let's say your girlfriend or your boyfriend cheat on you and so forth and so on. If you don't have a good coping skills, your mind is going to start running 100 miles per hour. And if you do not know how to cope with that, that could lead to some terrible things. That's also, there's a lot of crime committed during fatal attraction per se, right? Something like that. Because people don't know how to deal with certain emotion. And I think that that's very vital for people to understand who they are, and that when certain situations don't work out, that they have some kind of like coping skill to deal with certain things in their lives. So I think self-awareness, having able to have people you can talk to, and being able to have coping skills at your hand when those situations do occur, it's very important.
Yeah.
I would also add that not ignoring self-care. So allowing your body, your mind, and your spirit to rest and recharge is important. And sometimes you have to say no to certain things, because sometimes when you overrun, you can add on to creating a depressive episode, because you're spent, right? You have nothing else to give. So knowing that it's important to incorporate self-care, not to ignore it, is key to helping manage depression. Yes,
definitely valid points, and definitely agree with the awareness. That's one of the key things. I try to express it as much as possible with my clients, as being aware. That's one of the first steps of you being able to start working towards, the depression and healing that depression, right?
May I also add one thing too? With self-awareness comes self-concept. So when you self-concept is like, who you are. So if you know who you are, of course you're aware of it. So if you have an idea of who you are, if a certain situation happen, right, because you know who you are, because you have a self-concept, then it's less likely that you go to depression state that's going to last for a long period of time. I'm not going to say you're not going to have like a bad day or you're not going to be down, but if you have self-concept, which also leads to self-esteem, which also leads to self-confidence, then you're able to deal with situation differently.
Yeah, and also adding that all part of self-awareness, recognizing your triggers, because I think Pierre was saying how like a breakup can be, a trigger for someone to really go into depression. It could be different things, even grief, like a loss of a loved one could cause someone to go into depressive. So being aware of who you are and the things that send you down that to have that episode is important.
And may I please give a personal example? When I was 16 years old, that was back in 1998, I lost my mom. And my mom was the only person in this world that ever trusted. When I say ever trusted, ever, I mean, like, even though I was here with my dad, she was back home in Haiti. So when I found out she died, I went to a state of where I ran out of the house when I found out the news. I want to be by myself. But one thing I did realize as a child, my mom did prepare me for this day, for that day. I didn't know when it was coming, but she prepared me for it. But I did fall to a state of like a depressed. But one thing that did get me back up is my faith in God. Is what she instilled in me as a young boy. Knowing that those days was coming, she was like, "Hey, if I die, hey, always believe that God got you back." And till today, that's my stronghold. Whenever I'm going through something or face certain difficulty, my personal belief has really helped me handle certain situation.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pierre. Like having your personal belief system and just having, purpose in life kind of helps you manage your depression. Because at least, you're waking up for a reason today. At the end of the day, you're going to work because you love what you're doing. So you're waking up because you're doing that. Or you're waking up because at the end of the day, you want to see your kids, or you want to do your hobby that you really enjoy, or because you have a belief in God, God's always there for you. He's always there to support you. So just make sure you always have your belief systems, and having what's motivating you to also help manage your depression as well.
You have to have a grateful attitude. That's always gonna get you somewhere. And like Shanice was saying, being positive towards yourself, being grateful, and have a positive perspective and great purpose. Those things really take time for you to practice. But if you practice them every single day, you can get there. Just like it's like a muscles in your head that you have to build, because the biggest battles you're gonna fight is gonna be in your head. It's not gonna be physical battles. It's gonna be all in your head. So if you were to use those tools and you practice them every single day, well, the more muscles you're going to build, and the much better you're going to be as a person, the much stronger you will be mentally.
Yeah. And also, I want to say that having a support system, good network, close friends, church family, biological family, and also incorporating a therapist, because depression can spiral, and where it could be just very negative automatic thoughts that are, running through your brain. So to have a strong support system, people who will be there for you when you reach out. And most importantly, since this is mental health, we can't ignore having a counselor or a therapist that you go to see, and whatever the frequency, that's also determined by the therapist. So,
yeah. And the therapist is there to help you kind of identify what some of those triggers are, right? Knowing what warning signs are. And so those triggers are those things that kind of will bring you or pull you down into that depression, right? And so with that, you want to make sure that you can understand what those triggers are, and that you can start putting coping skills in place to help move you from that trigger. And then also looking at like the warning signs. Warning signs are the more physical signs, where you might feel it on in your hands, right? You might feel it, tension or so, or you have any type of just the physical feeling of someone who may upset you, right? And sometimes when we feel that, we can feel pain in other ways. And so knowing that when these warning signs start to happen, it's about to, start in terms of like a downward spiral. And so working with a therapist can kind of help you to identify what that trigger is, right? What is that physical feeling that you get? The staying in bed, right? One of those things, and feeling fatigue a lot, just the sadness and things. And so you want to make sure that you connect with a therapist to kind of help you go through those things. One of the things that I wanted to touch on was the emotional reasoning, right? We said that we would talk a little about that and how it relates, to depression. And so emotional reasoning, it seemed more so, it's like a cognitive process that kind of shape and influence all of that. And those beliefs that you have, and those beliefs are really more so based on feeling. And then what happens in depression is, if I feel this particular way, it kind of leads me and leads my day, and then it brings you into a deeper, depression. It's, you feel comfortable, you stay in that state. Those beliefs, they're false, what they call them, right? False, distorted beliefs that keep you where you are in that particular state. And so you have to kind of use, try to ration out things and use logic reasoning to help you with trying to change that way of thinking, right? Thinking in a more positive way, or thinking in a positive way that's going to help you to be able to combat some of those, the triggers, right? That's part of the coping skills, right? But it's important that you understand when you have that distorted thinking, how to identify what that distorted thinking is, right? And so if you have a situation, if we use something as simple as you have an individual who, maybe on their way to work, they're rushing, and they are driving, right? And then they get pulled over and they get a ticket, right? And then they are pissed with this ticket, right? And it kind of offsets your day, right? And so now you're at work, maybe snapping at people and maybe even snapping at your loved ones, because now with this ticket comes, some financial, responsibility that you weren't looking for, right? And so the thinking behind that is you're pissed because you got a ticket, right? And you have to pay this fine. However, if we kind of think about it in the other way, in a more positive way of thinking, it's maybe I need to slow down. And, you got to think about yourself, right? The safety of you, the safety of others. And so maybe that might kind of help and alleviate some of the stress of having to pay that ticket. That's the same thing that would go for someone who is dealing with, depression. You have another example is having, let's say having a mom who is suffering from depression. So you have this woman, she's suffering from depression, have children, and she's emotionally absent from her children. As her children are now entering to adolescence, she's starting to see some of, the behaviors, right? That she feel that she probably, this was passed down because emotionally I wasn't there. And so now they deal and struggle, with their emotions. And so she may feel that she made a lot of errors, right? A lot of mistakes in her parenting style. And she see now her children are suffering from it, and so she's depressed, thinks that she's not a good mother, she didn't do a good job, right? These are things that can really cause people to go into a depression, because then that opens the door for them to see all the other areas that they're failing in, right? And so in the thinking of what she's thinking on the emotional side of things versus the logic, where with logic looks for facts, and we know that in the facts that yes, you cannot change the past of what happened, but you still, and I say but because I like to tell people to use that but behind their thinking, because if you still have an opportunity to train your children or help and give them, the tools that they need to then be able to express themselves if that's what they're struggling with right now. So as they're transitioning into young adulthood or in school and college or, with their peers and they're starting to go into more adult relations and things, you worry about the impact you had on them and how they're going to deal with things. And so if you look at it in a way that, well, as the adult woman now, I can still teach them, ways. And so it's not just the end all. And so it's a way of trying to, change that distorted thinking to help you come up with a better way of thinking, a more positive way of thinking, so that you are not pushing yourself down into a more depressive state by your thoughts.
And I would also add to that being optimistic, optimism. Instead of being pessimistic, as you stated, that you're rushing to go to work, and you only got a ticket. It could have been worse. It could have been like get a car crash, and that you don't see your family again, or you got badly injured. And it could be different things that could have occurred. And one thing I always tell myself, yes, I miss my mother. Yes, I lost her when I was 16, but I'm so grateful that I spent 13 good years with her. You know what I'm saying? So I try to still look at the trying to be optimistic and positive mindset. Even though your day may be so bad, you think it is so bad, there's someone out in the world who's having a worse day than you. You may think your situation is the worst thing in the world, but if you get out of your situation, you will see that, oh my goodness, I'm grateful for this. And that's what Shanice and I agree. It's like, oh my goodness, there's something I can be grateful about. So being able to have an optimistic mindset is very crucial. And those things takes time to build, because we live in society. Society also has a big thing to do with it too, because we want this, we want that, want this, want that so quick. If you don't have this, you're not equal to this. So we do have to keep ourselves away from like what society expects from us. We have to know that, hey, this is who I am. This is what I have. Forget about what a society expects of me. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes we really have to be optimistic about who we are. Again, self-concept.
Absolutely, Pierre. So definitely understanding self-concept and what's cognitive distortion you kind of gravitate towards too, self-awareness. Those are all things that you kind of have to work on to manage your depression. And you don't have to do it alone. That's why getting a therapist is so essential. So I think now is a good time to move on to question 2. Which is, in regards to depression, can your personality trait impact how you reason? And how does it influence depression?
Yeah, so personality can influence, because there's research showing that there's introversion and how that's associated with more negative emotions, and then extroversion being more associated with positive emotions. So, for example, if you're for example, an introvert, right? Someone on the neuroticism side, their emotional reason can be, I'm going to be just fine. Like I don't need help with my symptoms, even though they know this is depression. They're just more, because they're more introverted, their inclination is more to still stay reserved and not want to really do much about it. But when you're going from the logical, you're saying, I am tired more than usual, right? And so let me call my doctor, or let me call my therapist and let them know this is how I'm feeling, even though I haven't been. So personality can play a role in how you're able to manage and cope with depression. It could be a contributing factor to how you're able to manage and control depression.
And if you look at some individuals, their outlook on life and on themselves, and so if it's more of a dark or kind of a gloomy, sad outlook, in terms of future and past, right? And maybe not even future oriented, right? And so they may be more trying to rationalize with the emotion, right? And if that happens, then you continue to keep yourself more in a depressive state. So I believe, yes, that it can influence, depression. You have sometimes someone's environment. You look at the traits that are within that environment. They pick that up, right, and they become a part of that environment. And so now, they're kind of preconditioned to this situation happening. So depression can definitely be influenced by traits.
Yeah, and you're right. There's that predisposition. It's there, right? And there's nothing that they can do about it, but how they're able to get the coping skills and use it to deal with the daily, stresses is very important. And this is to encourage people, like, just because your personality leans more towards, I'm more of the calm and I'm fine, even though you're not. There's still, this hope. This is more for all of us to be aware that you don't have to stay that way just because your predisposition to feeling that sense, to feeling it more. There's help, and you can get help. So you're able to function and live and do all the things that you need to do daily. So despite what your personality type is, there's still hope.
Absolutely. And I agree with that sentiment. And I'm gonna give you a couple examples. of that, again, nothing that we're saying is a not, like when we do research, we are very careful not saying that we're generalizing everything to the whole population. Like not because we're saying that you are internalize things that you more likely to be like don't who deal with depression like badly, or if you externalize things that you more likely to do a better job at. We're not making that like as a generalization. We just kind of like saying that more likely the chance factor. So I really want the audience to keep that in perspective. We're just saying chance factor. And I'm gonna give you a couple example of people who internalize things, what end up happening. If you look at the mass shooting, for an example, right? If we look at case by case, you'll see most of those people that who committed those kind of things, they internalize things. Somebody did something to them. They didn't talk to nobody about it, right? They just gone about their business, and then they go either do something completely dangerous. Case in point, I was watching this thing about Versace the other day, where the person who ended up shooting him never talked to anybody about doing anything to Versace, but he had internal issues. He thought he had like HIVs, and he thought he had, a lot of stuff was going on wrong with him in his life, where he had nobody to talk to, nobody he could trust to talk to, right? So he ended up doing that. He ended up taking action, right, and brought that attention to himself, and ended up hurting somebody else that he ended up falling in love with, never expressed that to that person, and ended up shooting somebody for no apparent reason. And if you look at, again, the mass shooting that happened within school, it's a lot of students who were very quiet who end up committing this kind of vicious crime. Again, I'm not saying that someone who internalize things is like always doing who's doing that, but the chance factor is pretty high. So we have to be able to express our thoughts. A lot of people in our community, especially in the Black community, we think that a man should not cry. We think a man should not be able to express themselves to a female if they're bothered by something, or that they should be man enough to say, "Oh, I'm a macho man." No, we all have feelings. We all have thought process. We should be able to express our thoughts to either our partners, our husband, and whoever it may be, even friendship. Like me, when something's going on with me, I'm gonna let you know. I'm not afraid to tell you how I feel, whether you like it or not. It's just the way that I feel at that moment. If I'm annoyed, I'm gonna tell you like, "Hey, I'm annoyed right now. Please get away from me." It doesn't cost me anything to say how I truly feel. So I feel like we have to get to the idea of us like speaking how we truly feel, and it's okay to cry. I've cried when I'm alone sometimes. Sometimes it's me just being grateful to God. Sometimes it's either I'm missing my mother. It's okay to express those things. So I think that we need to get to the point that where we are able to express our thoughts and kind of like say, this is what's wrong, so you can get help. Because if you don't tell somebody how you feel, how are they supposed to help you?
Right.
Well,
So
that goes back to my saying that I always say is you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So starting, to just feel comfortable within the mess that you lie in, and whatever comes, with you, all of that stuff that's in the core, all the mushy stuff, right? The stuff that if we peel back some layers, we'll be able to see and feel. But a lot of people are afraid of those emotions, and you're right. It's a really good idea to be able to express yourself and find someone to be able to help you with expressing yourself so that you can begin to heal. It's very important, I think, for clinicians as they work with clients to be able to identify clients who may be at risk. And so it's very important, that you can identify those with certain traits so that you can see how you can tailor your treatment to work with that individual, and hopefully they get the healing that they need. Therapy works.
It does. Yeah. And that's also a very good point, because also a lot of people don't realize when someone is an introvert, if they're going through depression, they think that's just their natural personality, that they're naturally quiet, naturally, to themselves, don't really go out as much, versus someone who's extrovert, like Pierre, you'll know if they're upset. You'll know if they're sad automatically. So you can easily, I noticed some things are going on with you. You should probably get some help. Versus an introvert, you may not be able to identify that. So just being able to know yourself as well as know those around you to understand, okay, that kid is very quiet. Let me go see how he's doing. Let me ask him, like, are you having a good day? How are you feeling? So just being able to recognize yourself and also those around you.
And to go with that kid student thing, as a school counselor, my first year, a lot of kids that was cutting themselves, they were very quiet. They were cutting themselves, they were very quiet. So I had to pay extra attention to them and tell them, hey, come to my office. Obviously, with my door open, had to follow the ethical standard and ask them, hey, can I please see your arm? Can you please pull your sleeve up? And then I see that they're cutting themselves. And of course, after the proper protocol, based on PGCPS ethical when it comes to cutting and stuff, like call the parents that they cannot go home without somebody taking them home. So it's like sometimes quiet kids sometimes are going through some stuff that we don't even know. And I have students that will be molested. And the girl was so quiet. She was only in second grade. She was getting molested at home. And that was very sad. And her sister had to come to me and talk to me about what's going on with her sister, because she wouldn't talk to me because she's so quiet and you would never think anything was wrong with her. So I think it's very important, like I said, for us to start teaching not just adult but young children. It's okay for you to express something, and stuff like don't be afraid, and let somebody know what's going on with you so we can help you.
And on that note, speaking of which, with the whole climate of things, it's important to bear that in mind, because as we're talking about personality and reasoning, certain for some people, it handling what's going on will look different from one person, one individual to the next. For some person, they will be okay. This is not over, but all the different lifts are off, and they want to go out and be around people. And then another person will just like, okay, I still want to stay in my corner, despite what the governor says on these bans, and I'm still. So the question is, given this current climate, how does the media influence your emotions, and how does it impact depression?
I think that the media has a massive influence in people's thinking, thought process, and I kind of feel like it can be very detrimental as well. Not to say that you should not take precaution about coronavirus. I'm not saying that at all. But there's also an idea of fear mongering as well. So we'll go back to self-awareness. Be aware of the situation. Do you do diligence to make sure you protect those around you who may be elderly age, infant, things of that nature, and also protect yourself, because again, you are responsible for your own happiness. Nobody else is responsible for your own happiness. So when it comes to the media, I think the media, it's like somewhat shapes to a narrative, and history has told us that the media is not really our best friend, and the media will tell you whatever they want to tell you. They're pushing certain agenda that they want to push. For example, the media, before they put something else, they study the audience psychologically. They know what can get you all wound up. They know what can get this demographic all wound up. They know what can get Black Americans or white Americans and Asian and so forth and so on. So they go after that, because what they do is rating. It's all about rating. What can we do to keep the audience coming? And what does rating do? Rating brings money. So I think that we have to take everything with a grain and salt, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for our own emotion, how we react to things. We're responsible for our own logical thinking. Like me, for an example, in this climate, I kind of feel like we live in a society where we are, in a sense, diminished in a lot of ways. And that is caused by the media. The division is caused by the media. The media, I think Malcolm X has a great quote that said, the media will make your enemy look like your best friend, and your best friend looks like your enemy. And it's kind of like, and it's so true. It's so much truth to that, because they can build you up and destroy you at the same time. they can do that. And you see it happen to someone like Michael Jackson. You see it happen to a lot of like Black celebrities where they build you up, and then when you do something, they destroy you. So I think that we have to be very, very careful with the mass media. I'm not really a big fan of mass media anymore. I don't listen to the big mainstream media news or anything like that. I do my best to do my own research on different things to make sure that I'm getting the proper information, and that is not propaganda. And I'm gonna look for that Malcolm X quote, and I will share with the audience when everybody else shared the thoughts.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Shani.
So I would definitely say just diving deeper into social media, since that's huge this modern day. That's a huge impact on people's emotions. I would say Generation Z, teenagers, young adults, they're the ones that grew up with social media from they're born. And so they're the ones who get their news from social media. And so they're knowing what's going on in the world, what's going on with their friends and family through social media. And so that causes them a lot of times to be with the mass shootings and murders and violence. You get desensitized to all those things. And so hearing about it, you don't react to it anymore because it's just an everyday thing to you. When it comes to seeing people post certain things on Instagram or Facebook, you kind of have this self-esteem issues because you see, oh, they look this way. How come I don't look that way? How come I don't have that designer bag? How come I don't have this and that? It causes you to kind of look at yourself and see, things you don't have and not appreciate what you do have.
Absolutely. A lot of people are impacted by that. They look for validation through a lot of these different platforms. And as well as kind of going into what we talked about a little earlier with the, and not on this particular discussion, but the virtual learning, the virtual world of how everything is happening, right? And so a lot of kids are dealing with those who dealt with anxiety or depression, when they were in a school building, it was, very overwhelming for them. So some of them now see today climate and everyone being, working from home or either, on a virtual classroom. And so they're thriving a little bit more. And then you have those who are very, I want to say extrovert, where they are looking for and need that peer social relations. And so seeing all of what we see in the media today and in on social media is having a huge impact on our youth, as well as the adults, adults who are used to kind of enjoying life, right? And their livelihood are now kind of on pause right now, and we're glued to the TV, right? And so a lot of this, and what Pierre is also expressing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it can keep us in a depressive mode.
Absolutely.
In a depressive state. And so we have to be very aware.
And he's the Malcolm X quote that I was trying to state. He stated this back in 50 years ago. He said, "This is the media, and the responsible media. It will make the criminal looks like he's the victim, and make the victim looks like he's the criminal. If you aren't careful, the media will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing oppressing." This sort of a propaganda tactic that I would call psychological warfare. And to me, it's like, it says a lot. And here's another one that I really like. It says, the media, that's from Malcolm X as well. He said, the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power, because they control the minds of the masses. So I think that, to me, as an African-American male, I'm very aware of police brutality. I'm very aware of all these things. However, one thing I do feel at times is that the mass media want to galvanize our base to react a certain way without giving us the proper information or the whole picture. So they give us one picture to get us all wound up, right? Emotionally, all wound up, right? And then later on you realize, okay, hold on. Maybe I didn't see the whole picture. And then you look back, you look at the whole picture, you're like, okay, maybe you know what? Yes, it's wrong what happened to this person, but you didn't give us the whole picture for us to be able to logically reason, say, okay, you know what, this is an issue. We need to talk about somebody should not be getting shot 7 times. Somebody should not be like getting kneeled on. We understand that, but you should give people the whole picture so you can be able to have a logical thinking process, so that they will not have a distorted mindset. Oh my goodness, the police completely did this wrong. There's nothing else happening before that. So they're not giving the complete picture. And then what they do is they pay a lot of pundits millions of dollars to also push the same narrative. And I think that, to me, they make us look really bad at times. But you know what? Shame on them to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, definitely with that, the media has a huge role in sorts people's perception, because you can hear about a Black male who committed a crime, may have harmed someone. And what they'll do is they'll talk about all the petty crimes that that person's done, minuscule things, stole $20, robbed a pack of gum from someplace, versus a Caucasian person. They may just say, oh, they were dealing with a lot of mental health issues. So they'll address mental health issues for the white person versus the Black male, when it could be the same exact thing, but just how the media portrays this person to be. So people automatically say, oh, this person's wrong, but this person, they just needed help.
And what you said, Shanice, is completely right. And another thing they don't do is also, I'm not trying to derive from what you're saying, which is completely true, and I'm just giving another perspective too, is that how come the media doesn't show when a white man is getting killed as well by a police officer? Why don't they do that? Why don't they do that? Why do they only do it when it happened to African American? Why do they do it when it happened to Hispanic? Why do they do it when it happened to Asian? Why is it they only do it when it happened to a Black male? Because when you look at some of these cases, especially with George Floyd and other that have happened, there's been white men that's been killed the same vicious fashion way. So why don't we see that? Are they trying to bring division? So we have to also think about that. Police brutality, yes, is an issue in the Black community, without a doubt. However, it's also a white issue as well, because I've seen videos where white male has been literally been shot viciously by police officers, but you don't hear about the case of Tony Tampa. You don't hear about Daniel Shaver. You don't hear about these cases that where the white males are getting blasted by police officers. So to me, is everything you say is true. I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying, but also white male are getting killed. Why is that they don't show it in the mass media? Why don't they show that?
I mean, definitely news outlets are going to push what people want to see, what they want to hear. So that's why it's our responsibility, being self-aware, to actually go on these news websites, because they'll have it on there for you about every single killing that happened in that area, every single, a crime that happened in that area. So you'll see, this white person died, this Asian person died, this white person died. You'll see, you just have to do your own research. So people just have to be mindful of what's being put out there and do their own research. So at the end of the day, you just have to be mindful of what's going on around you.
Yeah. And what I'm saying, what I was saying, police brutality is an issue, right? It's an issue in the Black community, but also it's like, it shouldn't be just based on it should just based on humanity issue to a certain extent, right? Yes, Black are more likely to get stabbed by a police officer, because I did read that study from Roland Fryer from Harvard University. He did this study where what happened with Mike Brown in St. Louis, I believe, he did a study to find out whether or not police are more likely to shoot Black male. Well, his finding was very interesting. So his finding was that police are more likely to pull Black male. Police are more likely to rough up Black males. Rough them up. But they less likely shoot them. They're more likely to shoot a white male than the Black male. So those studies have been done. And like I said, when I look at the case of Tony Tampa, it's kind of similar case to George Floyd, where the police was kneeling on his back, not necessarily his neck, but on his back for 18 minutes. And they were cracking jokes. They was they were all laughing about it. It was funny. And he ended up dying on the scene. Daniel Shaver was in a hotel room, got his hands up, and the police officer completely blasted him. So we don't see those things in mass media. And my thing is, they like division. And the way you conquer people, I'm gonna continue to say, is by getting to the emotion, and so by also dividing them. And I think that's the problem. I believe that in our community, we need to need more logical thinkers than emotional. And we need to kind of work on that. And I
that's
think
where
that's very important.
and that's where I was kind of going to go to in terms of the climate and everything and where we are and being aware. And Shanice, you mentioned something about kind of fact checking and things like that. The facts and things are there, and information is there for us to learn. However, a lot of this keep us with our emotions, on higher levels. And so a lot of times when we have we're so meshed with the emotion that kind of take over the logic and that logic reasoning. And so to sit and say, if I think logically, if I can go and read about this stuff and learn more about it, and I can see how it can help me, and what part can I play in this and trying to make this better, or trying to stop this from always keeping us in an emotional state. And so we kind of go on the emotion versus thinking about the logical things as it relates to this particular climate. It's a divide, between many, and so I wanted to, I guess, bring us into now, how do we get to, in terms of our next question, right? How do we identify cognitive distortions and how to cope with them? So some of what we just talked about in all of our questions all relate to cognitive distortions, right? And so how do we identify cognitive distortions for our viewers, right? And how do we teach them coping skills, or offer a coping skill? Helping them
thought stopping.
Thought stopping. Yeah.
Because and I think that this last video that we make, and inside of each person, you have two battles you're fighting every single day. And I would say, since we're talking about logical reasoning and emotion, I always say one is emotional, I would say one is logical reasoning, right? So a lot of time we feed whichever one that we feed the most, whether you feed emotion the most, sometimes that's the one that's gonna come out. If you feed logical reasoning more, you're going to become more logical thinker. So I think, to me, being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm in this situation now. What am I going to do? Not emotionally, just completely just explore yourself and kind of saying, well, you know what? You don't know how to handle your emotion. Be able to handle your emotion is very, very important, because in life, if you're not able to logically think or reasoning, that's going to be a big issue when you're at work, whether you're at school, because people will always find a way to get to you. And if you allow someone to get you fired from a job because of the emotion, then that's kind of like immature to a certain extent. So I think that being able to have thought stopping, using logical reasoning, that's very, very important.
Yeah. I think with cognitive ways to identify cognitive distortions is, like you said, Pierre, is to kind of stop and think. It's basically false and inaccurate information, right? You have to fact check. The evidence is there, but we choose not to. We rather rely on that emotional feeling versus going through, the fact checking. You can have any situation and kind of check the facts that are in front of you, even in death, where we, will mourn, the death of someone, and we're depressed. And depression is it's a part of the grief process. It's a part of what you do when you're grieving. And so, if you're in a depressive state, and you look at emotional versus the logical. The emotional is this person is no longer here, I can't do life without this person. Some may even go as far as say, I don't want to be here no longer, because they're no longer here. And so that's all of the emotional, right? And so that's how you're identifying anything that gives you that negative or that the comfort of staying where you are in depression. Right. And if you think of it logically, is you don't get over death. Right. You work through it. You learn to cope in a new life. After someone is deceased, and you have to look at, although I miss this person, I love this person, they're no longer here, and I'm very sad. But again, using that but I can, remember them, by this way, or learn how to live life, a new way of life without this person being here, or no, this person no longer being here. And so you put things in place, to keep you in more of a positive spirit of this person's memory. And so whether that mean you gain new relationships and friendships from people, through people, or through things that you get involved in, finding new ways to cope, by doing new things, when a loved one is no longer with you. And so although you're sad and this person is no longer there and you're upset and you're grieving, there is still life after. And so you have to figure out how to use that but, whatever that but is for you. They're no longer here and I'm very sad, and I'm going to miss them, but life continues and I still have to do X, Y, and Z. So these are the things that can help me to be able to cope in life, after the loss of a loved one.
Also understand that we're not here forever. None of us are gonna be here forever. We'll have our date and time. And like I always tell my friends, we're not gonna, me and you and everybody in this Zoom, we're not gonna be 100 years from now. What's very important is our legacy that we leave behind and the people that we help, and that's the most important things. And understand that you're not. I think a lot of things that lead people to depression is that they think that they're the only person at that moment that's going through that situation. They don't think nobody else has gone through that situation, but that's not necessarily true, because a lot of time you find that you're going through something, somebody else may have gone through the same thing, and maybe if you understand that, hey, you know what, I may be going through this right now, but like I said earlier, you may think you're going through something bad, but there's somebody else going through something completely worse. So it's always be able to kind of keep that in perspective, to have the optimism and understand that, hey, you know what, yes, my mother's not here anymore, but you know what, I spent 13 years with her. Well, I spent a good 40 years with her. Well, I spent a good 50 years with her. And by the grace of God, I'm not saying for you not to mourn, because the Bible tells us there's time to mourn, there's time to be happy, there's time to be born, there's time to die, in the book of Ecclesiastes. So when you look at that book and you say, okay, you know what, that strengthened my soul, because you know what, I know that one day that I may be here, one day I may not be. So it's kind of, don't take anything for granted. Don't take the people you love for granted. Show them love, show them appreciation. So when they're gone, you know you did your best. You know that you love them. You know that you bought them that flowers. You know that you hugged them. Yeah, you may have your disagreement, but you guys are able to forgive each other and move forward. There's no bitterness. So those things are also very important as well. Don't remember, there's something very interesting about life is that the first thing that happened to you in your mother's womb is that you have a heartbeat. That's the first thing. One of the first things that happened that says you have life. And I think, to me, like, your heart, do your best to keep it pure. Do your best to express your frustration to people. Don't be bitter. Don't be the person who don't forgive, because you're not forgiving somebody. It's like you're not forgiving yourself. Even if you did something to somebody, forgive yourself and move forward. Apologize and move forward. So I think just keeping things in perspective.
And so give me an idea, an example of a distorted thought, so our viewers can understand and know exactly, what does that look like? How does it happen?
I would say, for one, black and white thinking. So thinking there's no gray area. You're a good person or you're a bad person. There's no in between. And that's not true. Like, everyone, you may do something bad, doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you may have slipped up one time. So if, let's say, for instance, you somehow cheat on a test, it doesn't make you a bad person. You just, one weakness, you saw opportunity, you took it. It's okay. Things happen. It was wrong. But at the end of the day, you're not a bad person. You just move on from it and just keep doing things, to kind of help you stay positive, and from that viewpoint.
Another one I think is also, maybe there's someone you're interested in, right? You like, and you try to approach, and then that individual may reject for whatever reason they're rejecting for. Someone who thinks with distorted thinking can think and kind of internalize it to where I was rejected. That means that I don't look good. I may see myself. They may see themselves as ugly, right? No one loves me. No one likes me. No one care to be around me. They start to see all the other signs of other situations that may have happened, and they try to put that all in this one situation. They begin to just feed the mind, and you're feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding that emotion, and it has now grown into its own thing. And so now you're in a depressive state. You can have a husband and a wife where there's a separation, and so with that separation is failure, and feeling like you're not going to be able to live up to the expectation of, okay, I'm supposed to be this great husband, this great wife, right? And so then you start to talk down yourself, self-sabotage, and things like that. And so a lot of that is disordered thinking. And some ways that you can combat that is, you have to kind of look at the evidence and things that are around you. What's happening at the moment, right? What happened at the moment? Give yourself some room to say that maybe this individual, had whatever reasons for not, wanting to talk with me or like me or socialize with me, and not make it so much about internalizing it and making it so much of you. And so being able to identify those thoughts, those negative thoughts, and thinking about yourself, to be able to combat them with what you can, a different way of looking at it and thinking more positive.
I think masturbation is when you think you must do this, you should do this, you ought to do this. No, you don't. You're not responsible for somebody's happiness, and somebody else is not responsible for your happiness either. And if you go around and believing that, if someone say that you're stupid, for an example, right? And you blame that person, and you start acting stupid, start behaving stupidly. You say, well, then you go back later and say, well, it's because of that person I did something stupid. No, you can't do that. Actually, it's your fault. It's your fault from the get-go, believing that, hey, you know what that person say about me is true, but that's when you don't know who you are. And that's why the self-concept is very important, because at the end of the day, if you know who you are, if somebody call you stupid, say, you know what, that's not who I am. So you don't go by what somebody else say about you. What do you say about you? What do you think about yourself? What do you love yourself? Do you care about you? Are you intelligent? Those things are very important, because people are going to tell you whatever they want to tell you. But at the end of the day, you're going to be alone with yourself, not that person. So always make sure that you don't do things to please people. You don't listen to what people say about you. Now, listen to constructive criticism. Okay, constructive criticism is good. If you have a friend that say, hey, you know what, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, that's something different. Don't listen to people who's going to put you down all the time. You don't need that negativity. Now, it's okay. I don't want somebody to keep telling me, oh, P.S. the greatest thing since sliced bread. No. What the heck is wrong with me sometimes? Let me know. Check me out sometime, because that's also good. That's also positivity as well, because none of us are perfect. We all have something we can work on. So don't reject constructive criticism. However, reject the consistent of negativity that's been thrown at you.
Yeah. Also,
Oh, no, go ahead, Edna.
Okay. I'm kind of piggybacking off what Pierre is saying. So, for instance, just being in the climate that we're in, right, and just being in regards to depression, where it's like excessive eating, or or not too much. So it could be thinking, well, okay, so I'm big, so if I eat one more unhealthy meal, what difference does that make, right? I'm already at this stage of weight that I'm. So that's more of the emotional thinking of it. But then when you think in logical, you say, okay, well, that is, look at the facts. Okay, if that is the case, you can still eat, but then incorporate healthy snacks, because depression has a lot also to do with nutrition, right? You need things that will give you energy. So fruits, vegetables, and just other healthy things. Now there's YouTube that you can make all kinds of healthy cauliflower pizza. Okay, I've never tasted it, but I'm just saying, it's different things that you can make with what you have, and get you to have that energy, right? And help you to maintain and to cope. So even when the thoughts are, well, I'm so far gone, right? That isn't always the truth. You have to do some fact checking and then see how And always that might not be, sometimes you need help, right? And having someone point these things out to you. So that's when you have a therapist where you can discuss body image and weight and exercise and all these things that will be healthy for you. So that's how emotional, and then the logical is, let me get some help and get some healthiness and incorporate that into my life. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. But I was going to say, as far as one cognitive distortion is jumping to conclusions. Pierre mentioned, as far as, being able to accept rejection, and that's a huge issue for some people. Sometimes with that fear of rejection, you end up mind reading, so thinking what someone might say or do. So if you're attracted to somebody, you may just not ask them out at all because you feel like they're just reject you automatically. Or if you feel like you want to apply for this job, you kind of think, oh, I'm not going to get it. I'm not qualified enough. I don't have everything I need for this job. I'm not going to do it. That all goes back to your self-esteem, your self-confidence. So being able to identify that you're kind of going through these issues, that you're not having these positive thoughts about yourself. And one way to kind of combat that is just doing positive affirmations. So just telling yourself daily, I am intelligent, I am smart, I am beautiful, I am handsome, I am capable, I am powerful. Just being able to tell yourself that you can do these things so you don't feel that rejection, because rejection is part of life.
And also what Shanice is saying, now that we're in this technological stage, the positive affirmations, right? Some people do Post-its, and others now you can use your device, right, to set alarms and alerts that will go off at different times of the day that feeds you these messages, and constantly. You could do it 3 times a day, right? Morning, midday, and then nighttime, right? Because depression can mostly it hits at nighttime, right? So you can have all these alerts going off that remind you of, the good things about you. Because as we said, social media feeds us negative things, and people around us but to incorporate those into your regimen of living, so you're able to cope and manage and think more of on the logical, the factual side, versus just leaning. You use some of the emotions. You don't want to be heartless either, right? But just balancing it out with some facts.
And so
that's a good point.
Yeah. And so I know that we have, I do have a question that came in. And so I would like to, I guess, start by answering some of those questions. But I do want to kind of finish by saying, as far as this particular question, that sometimes it's difficult to recognize, distorted thoughts. They're kind of like features of like day-to-day things that we do, like every day that we wake up, we can have these sort of, thoughts and feelings as we go, through the day. And so they're dangerous because they are hard to recognize. And they're kind of like, for some reason, we tend to record the negatives and they stick with us. More than the positive. And so
absolutely
20 people can tell me that I did such a great job today on a presentation, on whatever it is, you're a good person, or you look lovely for the day. And one person to tell me, I look horrible, I did a bad job. That one person and that one statement will stick with people more, and kind of then get them in the thought process of, thinking so negative. And a lot of that right there is a lot of distorted, thinking, and it can be very dangerous if you're not aware of it. A lot of what we have just expressed as far as ways of coping are all coping styles that can be used and are used outside of therapy, right? Help you to cope in between, you being able to see someone and talk to go through and process some of these things. But I'm an advocate of therapy. And one of the most important things I think is being able to process this with someone, processing it with a therapist, processing it with someone that can really help you kind of, I go back again to peeling those layers and really processing where that distorted thinking started. Because it started from somewhere. And so it tends to carry over and carry over. And so it's good when you're able to work with someone to really process that and get through and understand, you know, where it comes from and how you show up in the world today, how you show up at work with, you know, your coworkers and those that you have to work with. How do you show up in your personal relationships? How do you show up at home? You know, and so it has an effect on all of that, because your thinking can spill over into a relationship. Any one of those relationships, work, homeschool, social, or whatever, they spill into. We come as people, we are individuals, and we come, you know, with everything, right? And so we show up into a relationship, you know, with the negative thoughts and distorted thinking of being abandoned. Right. So what does that look like in my relationship today if I felt I was abandoned by, you know, a parent, right, or loved ones when I was younger, right? And so now anytime I'm in a relationship and I feel that you cannot spend time with me the way that I think it should be spent, then it's abandonment. And then I start to show up in my relationship with arguments, you know, towards this particular situation. And so it's very important that we do understand and we are aware of those distorted thoughts and work with someone to help process them. And so I want to go to, I guess, the first question. And if we have some viewers, if you're interested in sending a question, so you can text that question to 301-660-2558. Again, you can text that question to 301-660-2558. Last time, 301-660-2558. And so let's see. So one of the first questions was, how do you help someone with depression? So as a family member and a loved one, how do you help someone with depression?
I definitely say, you know, if it's a loved one, family member, just listening to them, reaching out to them, even if they may be annoyed with you contacting them, just letting you know that you're here for them, that you're available to talk and listen. Because a lot of people feel like they have no one to talk to, they have no one to go to. They may feel like people just, you know, would just give them advice and just throw things at them, but not really take the time to actually listen to them. So just being there for them, just letting them know I'm here to listen. Not going to talk, just want to hear what you're going through, how you're feeling, and just going from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would also add with that to be a good listener. Don't listen to response. So listen genuinely and express whatever feedback you may have, or if you want to refer them to a therapist, you can do that as well. But make sure you listen, not to respond, but listen with compassion and empathy. Put yourself in their position, put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? You know, so that's the one thing that we teach. We are taught when we went to school about empathy. So it's important that we feel empathy for our brothers and our sisters, friends, partners, whoever it may be. So again, listen carefully, empathize with them, but also help them seek help if you can't help them to the point that where you feel like, oh my God, I can't really help you, but I can recommend you to this person or that person.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that help them participate and engage in activities, right? Because depression, oftentimes you lose interest in things. So you could be that support person that draws them out to help them get them active versus being withdrawn and cycling deeper into the depressive episode. So you could be a support for them.
And also, if there are certain activities they may like, if they enjoy doing certain things, maybe they can go do art something, or play sport, or, you know, get out and kind of like do some fun activities, you know. So that's also very helpful.
Right. Especially now with things going back into lockdown, definitely just saying, hey friend, hey girl, let's do a Zoom call. Let's bring everybody together. We can watch our favorite show, our favorite movie. So there's definitely ways you can do things without actually going outside. You can do things virtually because you kind of have to.
And just know that it's going to be this is going to be hard. At times it'll be difficult, and so you just have to have a little patience. Trying to understand them, and the state that they're in is a good idea to learn about depression. If they have a therapist already and they're working with someone, maybe seeing if it's a option for you to be able to go into therapy with them. Some people are very private with therapy, and so that's why I struggle with sharing that. But if they're open and willing enough for you to kind of join in with them on a session, maybe you can go in to learn how to support. Right. And the therapist can share with you, educate you on depression, how to help, and especially when someone is very, episodic and having an episode. And so I think, it's a good opportunity for you to really learn a lot about how you can help someone cope outside of therapy. And again, creating a welcoming environment where they can feel that they can be able to express themselves and not be judged for whatever they're feeling and whatever they're going through. One of the things I want to express, because a lot of family and friends and loved ones tend to say, oh, just get over it, you'll be fine. And so try to stay away from that type of talk and really just more effective listening and really hearing what they have to say. And, that will help and kind of go a long way at the time you think it's not. But in some time, you'll see that, it's been helpful. And then you want to also be aware of any signs that look like they're in crisis to where they feel that they want to harm themselves. And so just being aware of some of, the talk that comes along with that, seeming like they're no longer interested in being here, not thinking future oriented, not thinking about tomorrow, or making certain statements as if they have plans on hurting themselves. And so it's important to definitely make sure that if that is something that happens, then you need to emergency, your nearest emergency room, or if there's someone not someone, but if there is a local facility that you are able to take, a crisis center or so, that you're able to support them in getting to. But it's very important that they do see someone if that's what they're thinking. Okay. The other question that we do have is, how do you help someone who identifies with distorted thoughts, but it stems from a cultural perspective? That's a hard and tricky one, and you got to tread lightly. Especially if it's a loved one, or if it's someone you're trying to build a relationship, and that means friendship, intimate relationship, or whatever. I think it's always important to welcome other people's perspectives, their cultural perspectives and traditions, right? Their values and morals and stuff. And always be respectful of that, as you want someone to be respectful of your views, your cultural beliefs and norms. So you always, want to be open. I think a good way is to learn about their perspective as it relates to their culture. You might find it very interesting versus dismissive or rejecting what their perspectives are versus what you have, or your distorted thinking. And I want to actually change that, because now listening to it is we have to clarify what that distorted thought might be, because if it's cultural, it might not be distorted. If it's cultural, how can I say that your thinking is distorted when this is a norm for you? And so it's important to understand what that norm is for that individual, because then it may not be distorted. And as clinicians, that's something that we have to be very aware of when we are working with individuals from different cultures. And so that's a very interesting question. But like I said, it's always good to learn, about someone else's cultural perspectives and how you can maybe compromise with what that may be.
Right.
I think
I would speak from a Caribbean background. My family's Jamaican, so I know a lot of Caribbeans, and I know definitely with a lot of maybe the older generations, it's kind of more brought up to not really talk about emotions and just kind of keep that more into themselves. And so they kind of easily to minimize, their children's, people around them, their emotions, their feelings. And so that can be one way as far as, kind of conflicting with their cultural backgrounds, because that's kind of like the way a lot of people within the Caribbean are just, you raise your children, you make sure you have roof over their heads, clothes, food, everything you need. That's it. You don't have to talk to them, about their emotions and feelings. It's kind of the idea. You do as I say, I'm the parent. That's it. There's no talking back. And that, with that viewpoint, it kind of hinders the child from being able to express themselves. And so you see a lot of, millennials, people my age, who, have challenges expressing themselves to their partners and friends because they grew up in a household where they were kind of dismissive and weren't able to express their feelings. And so they have these negative thoughts about themselves and not able to express it because they weren't raised to express it.
And now, what does that look like in a relationship? That looks like actually, and I just had a conversation such as this, where if you do grow up in a culture, in that particular culture where the way to express love is to make sure there's a roof over the head, food on the table, clothes on the back, right? And you're taken care of and have what you need, versus showing the emotion, expressing it through hugs, loves, and saying, I love you, can't wait to see you, or whatever. And then you are entering into a relationship as an adult with someone who had completely opposite. All the loves, all the hugs. We have to, we're very meshed. We're very, I need you to sit right here. And so you have these two people who are now together, right? And if they don't understand what those love languages are, it becomes conflict. And
I was just going to say it will, right? It definitely
because
will
you're giving
cause
me
conflict.
all of this, and I don't want that. I don't care for that. And then I'm going to show you how I love you by just supporting. But I'm not giving you the emotional part. And so now physically you're there, emotionally absent, right? For one individual, and then that becomes conflict in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also recognizing, as Pierre was saying, empathy. And as you were saying, recognize that we're individuals and we all have our context, what we come into the relationship with. And that's why premarital counseling is so key.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you're coming from a whole different background where, for instance, a family that yells, right? And that's their norm, right? And then the other family, they just basically whisper, so now you come together, and then when you just try to communicate something, but your tone is just a little bit louder than, that whisper, it's perceived as, wow, you're coming down, and talking down to them, or it's an argument, or you're angry and it's misinterpreted. So it's so key to bear in mind how everyone brings in some kind of baggage. Right? Could be 2 pounds for one person. Could be, could be 500 for the other. But bear in mind that if you're coming together as a union, you're saying, I'm choosing to practice selflessness in a sense. I'm coming in to understand where you're coming from. Will I need help to get there? Sure. That's what therapy is for. You have the neutral party who's not for, the man or the woman, but it's there to look at things objectively and help you gain the tools to communicate and to dive into needs and wants and your love languages. And then you're able to both give each other what you need and what you want.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's so funny we talk about personality trait tonight, because Shanice was saying something about growing up in a Jamaican household, also growing up in a Haitian household. I faced the same thing. But the interesting thing about it is, right, though that's how my uncle and my mom was like that to a certain extent, I'm completely different from them. I mean, like, I allow my son to express himself. I talk to my son. I don't hit. I don't make. I don't. Of course, I talk to him very firmly when he does something wrong, and I sit him aside. Hey, no, he did this wrong. He did that right, and we'll talk about stuff. Now, if he does it again, then I be more firm. But he gets all the hugs. He gets all these, things that I did get a lot of hugs and kisses from my parents. I'm not gonna lie about that. I did, but there was a lot of strictness as well. So I think also personality has something to do with it, because sometimes we can tell your kid's personality. Like my son, I can tell he's gonna be a social being, and I think he might have got that from me. That's what a lot of people are saying. So I think like personality. I don't know. The things I don't know if it's innate or is it something that you learn through your environment. Because I think when I look at some of the things that Shanice just saying, but you can also look at the opposite, where parents has been very loosing in some cases and not very strict, and kind of go down in spiral as well. And where kids was very kind of like strict, and the kids become very successful. So it's kind of like, you kind of take, it's always like, I don't know, want to use the devil's advocates, but it's just kind of like, depend on who you're talking about, depend how people take certain, depend, like we were saying, depend how somebody translates something, somebody can, like, look at the Jackson 5. Michael Jackson, most of his brothers got treated the same way. Why was he the only person that was really traumatized by it, to the extent that where he ended up being where he was? So it's just like sometimes it's translation.
It is, yeah. And then you have to look at it like, again, it's, you have where some people who grow up in a household where there may be a criminal history, right? Criminal parents or parents who have been incarcerated. So you have incarcerated parents, or you have absent parents, or you have parents who may have, been on substances, drugs and alcohol or whatever. And you have those who may be impacted to where, they'll deal with a lot of mental health issues. Right. And then a lot of things are kind of like, preconditioned for them. And it's a possibility or more likely that this individual will go that same route, as their parent or in the environment, or the loved ones who are caring for them in that environment. And then you have those who decide, I don't want this for my life. And, and they have that personality or that trait or whatever that's influencing them to help them make better choices and decisions. And that shows, we're different, and what we take in, and, and what influence us. And so it can go, either way. And so the biggest part is the biggest thing to understand is just being very aware of you, being able to be flexible to compromise. And especially when you're going into relationships, any relationships, even with your friends, you have to compromise. You find ways to compromise to make that relationship grow. And so it's really just, compromise. And I think we want to maybe curb that culturally. It's a distortion because I can't say in someone's culture that, this is, that isn't normal. And I've done it. I have been a creature who's done it in the past and said that wasn't normal, right? And that's before I got all my education and learned all about all I needed to know that, culturally, this is what one do. We have our universal things that we all do the same, and we have to be open and aware enough to know that others may have other ways in what they do in some areas of life. And so we have to kind of be a little bit more understanding of that, and we can teach them our way and we can learn about their way. And so we have to try to, just be careful when it comes to, that type of relationship, if it is something that's causing any friction or conflict. And so I think so. That is it. I don't think I have any other questions. I think tonight was a very great discussion. I hope our viewers was able to really benefit from the information that they received. I guess we can kind of go around and give how our viewers can be able to contact us, or stay in touch and continue to follow. And as we grow, we'll learn and have ways that we can definitely be able to communicate on other platforms with our viewers. And so for me, again, my name is Margo Claybrooks. Again, I am a licensed clinical mental health provider in the state of Maryland. I am also a school counselor for Prince George's County Public Schools. And I also have my own practice, which is Touch of Peace Counseling Services. You can reach me on my website, which again is Touch of Peace Counseling Services altogether.com. Right. And you can leave me contact information and I can follow up with you. Other than that, I am on Facebook and Instagram. You would just put in my name, Margo Claybrooks. And that's it for me.
For me, I'm Shanice Martin. I'm a licensed graduate professional counselor. At the moment, I'm not taking any clients in Maryland, but I can be reached at smartin@abcmaryland.com. Again, smartin@abcmaryland.com. I will have a Facebook soon. Pending.
So I'm Edna Chayquason. I am a licensed graduate professional counselor in Maryland. And yes, I am accepting new clients. I'm currently working for a private practice. And so the contact information is edna.keyson@lohcounseling.com. And if it's via phone, it's 410-970-2328, extension 702.
Again, my name is Pierre Bachelor Dorval. I am a school counselor for PGCPS, Prince George's County Public School. Again, I'm currently finishing up my my last class, so I can apply for my license. So I can be like Shanice and Edna, and then maybe be like a superstar like Mrs. Claybrooks, like next year, Lord willing, or next 3 years. I am. You can reach me by my emails, Pierre. Piere.Dorival, Dorival @yahoo.com. And I'm also on Facebook at Pierre B. Dorival. That's on my Facebook name. Again, it was a pleasure to be with my colleagues tonight, and I look forward to continue to do this. And you can always ask us questions afterward as well. Shoot me an email or whatever. So we're here to support you.
Absolutely.
And check out Miss Claybrooks' private therapy, and I'm sure she has some good people that she's working with, and come check it out, and she's a great person. I know her since graduate school.
Yes. Okay. All right. And so we want to say good night to our viewers.
Yeah.
And we will see you on the next one.
Thank you for having us.
And take care.
Thank you for having us.